I know that we will be hearing momentarily about all of the work that you all are doing related to tonight's topic around persecution. And I will be grateful for that. We'll learn a lot about the way that religious freedom is compromised by persecution. All religions are hindered by intolerance of national governments or majority religious groups. And we know from the regular reporting of our own State Department, as well as the report of the United States Commission on Religious Freedom, of violence around the world, of systemic violations of religious freedom, notably for religious minorities. And in 2020, 29 countries were noted with various levels of concern by the US CERF. I'm grateful as well for the Religious Freedom Roundtable. I suspect many of you have participated, as have I, which addresses these issues globally on behalf of the US State Department. And grateful to Ambassador Sam Brambach for this work. But neither of these reporting bodies, as you know, takes a look at the United States. And that's with very good reason. We are blessed with a First Amendment which guarantees freedom of religion. Our founding documents support pluralism, tolerance, and respect for an America in which people of all faiths and those of no faith are allowed to flourish. That pluralism and tolerance, however, is in peril in our own time with the rise of something called Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism contradicts the very ideals of that First Amendment, suggesting that the city on a hill, the hope of the tired, the poor, those masses yearning to breathe free, must be a Christian mass of people. The Reverend Jamie Washam is minister of the First Baptist Church in Lincoln, Rhode Island. That church was founded by Roger Williams, who you remember was banished from Massachusetts in the 17th century for harboring new and dangerous opinions. Williams fled to Narragansett country, where he received refuge. His ideas and writings became what we now enjoy as religious liberty and the separation of church and state. Roger Williams was indeed a Christian and gathered the First Baptist Church in Providence, Rhode Island, on the idea of the exercise of free religion for all persons and no establishment for any faith. The pastor of that church today, Reverend Washam, recently wrote an editorial in the Providence Journal, talking and speaking about the perils that this religious freedom is under today. He says, maintaining these ideals of tolerance and pluralism require participation and vigilance. Here's what he said, and I quote, "Ours is not a Christian nation. Yet the United States is beset by an ideology that seeks to conflate American and Christian identities. Christian nationalism is a cultural framework that advocates and idealizes a fusion of Christianity with American civic life. Christian nationalism is an extreme form of patriotism that demands a position of superiority while leaving little room for dissent. It threatens all our religious communities and our shared democracy, and is the antithesis of what Roger Williams staked his life upon. The founders of our nation made the radical decision to create a religiously diverse democracy where all faiths could be welcomed. By contrast, Christian nationalism implies that one must be a Christian in order to be good, or in order to be an authentic US citizen. Further, it often provides cover or even legitimization for racial subjugation and white supremacy. Conflating the authorities of church and state is idolatry, and it can lead to the oppression of marginalized and minority groups." Thank you, Reverend Washam, for those words. That's not to say one shouldn't have a national identity. Of course, each of us has a national identity, a cultural identity and heritage, a family identity, and more. That's what makes us who we are. And many of us have a strong religious identity: Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, many more. But conflating that national identity and religious identity leaves us with a sense of intolerance and a lack of religious freedom for those whose faith is different from our own. That is not something that our founders had in mind. Christian nationalism, however, is not just an idea. It shows up in politics and policy. Here's how. And this comes from an organization on which I serve on the steering committee called Christians Against Christian Nationalism. And I just want to note the ways in which this Christian nationalism idea shows up in politics and policy. And there's been a lot of study on this. And you might have heard of Andrew Whitehead, who wrote a book called Taking Back America for God, Christian Nationalism in the United States. And some of his studies have shown this too. When we lean on Christian nationalism, what that means, it leads us too often to embrace things like approving an authoritarian tactics, demanding people show respect for national symbols and traditions, fear and distrust of religious minorities, including Muslims, atheists, Jewish people, condone police violence toward Black Americans, distrust accounts of racial inequality, and more. Christian nationalism and folks who cling to those beliefs too often believe racial inequality is due to the personal shortcomings of minority groups. The report being very uncomfortable with both interracial marriage and transracial adoption. Hold anti-immigrant views, fear refugees, oppose scientists and science education in schools, believe that men are better suited for all leadership roles, while women are better suited to care for children at home. As one who has cared for children and who has also had a full-time job during that whole time, I think my children have actually benefited from the fact that I've been able to do both. But in any case, for us today to advance religious freedom, especially in the United States, we need to be vigilant against any ideas that prevent us from maintaining that sense of tolerance, that understanding of pluralism, that welcome to all who come onto our shores, and that ability for all religious people, all who believe, to flourish in their own way. Thank you very much.